I asked the Yes Case co-chair, Rachel Perkins, if the launch of their campaign today will change the debate immediately.
Well, I don't think it's going to be instant at all. This has been a decades-long process, but I think significant support that we've received today means that it will now propel it and give it a momentum, and we'll be able to really take the conversation out to the community, because we haven't really been able to do that, in earnest. So now it becomes a discussion really with the Australian people on the ground, which is, where we need to have it.
Yeah, and you've got an official campaign going and you're flush with funds too, $5 million from the Paul Ramsay Foundation's an enormous amount of money, and you're going to get a lot more. You're going to get millions from the corporate sector and other groups, aren't you?
Well, I think the support is showing a real maturity. Like, there's so many people who want to support this campaign, and because they feel it's like the right time. That's what we're really getting a sense of. We've had 30 years of reconciliation, and now here's a practical solution on the table in front of the Australian people, and that is really drawing a great support behind it, because people, it's tangible. It's a tangible change, and people, want to make that change, I think, overwhelmingly. We see that in the data. People are supporting this, average Australians. So it feels really good. It feels like there's momentum behind it.
What we also see in the data and in the polling and in the political debate is that a lot of Australians want more detail. And this is not just a political point. Of course, Peter Dutton keeps making it, but it's a point for voters, right? If you want them to vote to mandate a voice in the Constitution, they understandably want to know exactly what would that voice look like. Do you agree that they need more detail on what the proposed voice would look like?
Yeah, this is a question that keeps coming up, right? Where's the detail? Where's the detail? But what Australians are being asked is quite a simple question. And the Prime Minister's given some draft wording to that. There's a process where that wording will go to Parliament, and there'll be submissions like there is for any formal process. People all over Australia will be able to comment on those words. But we've got to remember that it's a constitutional referendum, right? The Parliament will legislate the detail on what the voice looks like. But it's up to the Australian people to agree that there should be a mechanism in the Constitution, and that's clearly what the Australian people are being asked to do. And
sure.
The Parliament, which is their job, will be asked to then work out the detail in the legislation.
Yeah, sure, we understand that, and but you do, if you want people to say, yes, we want the Parliament to institute a voice, then surely the proponents, especially the Prime Minister, needs to say, well, this is what the voice would look like. This is the kind of voice that we would legislate. Otherwise, people are really voting for something that's quite abstract.
Well, is it abstract? I mean, they're voting for the wording that says something like, and I can't, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't, give it to you verbatim, but they're asking Australians if Indigenous people should be able to have a view, to have a voice, to give advice to Parliament and the Executive on laws that affect them. That is the principle that people will be voting on. And sure, there will be more detail on what the voice might look like, the structure, but that will be worked out after the referendum. We know there's principles around what the voice will be, that it will be grassroots, that it will be ground up, that it will be able to give advice to local government, state government and the federal parliament. We know that there's those principles, and I think we'll see more detail being revealed as the debate continues. But we've got to remember we're 6 months out. That's quite a bit of time. More information will be revealed as time goes on, and that's part of the political process.
Indeed. Now, when you talk about that question that's being put to people, the actual constitutional change, at the moment it says the voice would give advice to Parliament and to the government. Now, there's been a long-running debate. Some people say the advice shouldn't go to government, only to the Parliament. Frank Brennan's been running that argument for many, many years now, and it's got a head of steam again now. Do you think that's a compromise that would make any difference to people if the voice was advising only the Parliament, not the government, and therefore perhaps minimising any legal challenges?
Well, I think the way that this principle or this idea was first devised was that it would give advice to the Executive and the Parliament. And the reason that it's got to give advice to the Executive the executive being cabinet, is that that's where legislation is formed, that's where it's discussed. So it's giving early input rather than just before the bill gets, put through the House of Reps. So that's the logic, that people would be able to consider advice in the early stages of developing legislation. So I would think that that's a logical thing. It actually just makes sense for Indigenous people's voices to be heard early in the process rather than at the last stage.
We'll see where that debate goes. Now, the coalition, well, the Liberal Party, of course, the Nats have already made up their mind, but the Liberal Party position is going to be key. As it happens, Peter Dutton was in Indigenous communities in the Northern Territory today. He's still calling for more detail, but he is keeping an open mind. He says he thinks a voice could, if it's framed properly, could deliver real practical benefits for Indigenous Australians. So have you given up on Peter Dutton, or are you hoping to meet with him soon to try and get him on board?
I'm never giving up on Peter Dutton or the Liberal Party. I have many friends and colleagues who are Liberal voters. I have friends in the Liberal Party, and I know that there's support in the Liberal Party for this premise. So we are going to continue to be in dialogue with the Liberal Party throughout the process. And yes, there will be debate. We welcome debate. There should be debate, and I'm really glad that Peter's out there listening to grassroots community, because we know that 86% of Indigenous people support this. So he will be hearing from the people on the ground that they support this, and I think it's really good he's getting it, out in communities. So good on him, and let's keep talking about it, because that's what democracy is, right? We debate things. So let the debate continue.
A big day for you, Rachel. The Yes campaign underway. Thanks for making time and joining us.
Look, it's a great moment here in Adelaide. It's like 41 degrees, but the energy is high. There's so much excitement. So thanks for letting me be on your show and share the excitement here.